Donald Trump took to YouTube to highlight plans for the beginning of his presidency. In his 2.5-minute video, he says he wants to put America first and create wealth and jobs for American workers. To do this, he's asking his team to develop a list of executive actions he can take on day one.
On trade, I am going to issue our notification of intent to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a potential disaster for our country. Instead, we will negotiate fair bilateral trade deals that bring jobs and industry back onto American shores. On energy, I will cancel job-killing restrictions on the production of American energy, including shale energy and clean coal, creating many millions of high-paying jobs. That's what we want. That's what we've been waiting for. On regulation, I will formulate a rule which says that for every one new regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated. So important.
He also spoke about protecting America from cyber attacks and other attacks, cracking down on lobbying in Washington, and one of his signature issues in his campaign.
On immigration, I will direct the Department of Labor to investigate all abuses of visa programs that undercut the American worker.
Trump also met with many of the top figures in TV news on Monday, reportedly blasting top executives and many well-known anchors and reporters from ABC, NBC, CBS, and cable news networks. The New York Post reports Trump kept saying, "We're in a room of liars, the deceitful, dishonest media who got it all wrong." He addressed everyone in the room, calling the media dishonest, deceitful liars. He called out CNN's Jeff Zucker by name and said everyone at CNN was a liar and CNN was a network of liars. Trump is still meeting with possible members of his cabinet, including former Texas Governor Rick Perry, former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown, Hawaii Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, and Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin, who could be Secretary of the Interior. Fallin was a recent guest on the 700 Club, where she talked about Trump's plan for energy independence.
I would much rather buy produced oil, gas, coal, whatever the energy source might be, from within the United States, than to go to foreign countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, other countries that produce energy and produce oil, and to buy it from them. I'd rather spend it in the United States, employ Americans, and be able to take care of ourselves.
President-elect Trump still has nearly 2 months to go before he takes office, but he's making it clear that he intends to hit the ground running right from the beginning. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
I talked to our executive director of the ACLJ, Jay Sekulow, and he said it's amazing. Every single person who's being mentioned is a good guy. He likes some versus the others. They're all good picks, and it's just amazing how he's filling his cabinet with people who are extraordinarily able, at the same time very acceptable to the conservatives in our nation. He's showing a deft touch. Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us from Washington. And David, the word is out, and I think it's wise that the Trump administration is not going to go after some kind of an indictment of Hillary Clinton. What do you hear about that?
Pat, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said wise. I think you're right. As a matter of fact, that is the word now, that the Trump administration, when they take over in late January, will not go after Hillary Clinton as it relates to that email scandal we heard so much about. And so a lot of folks are going to be wondering why. You know, Donald Trump promised this on the campaign trail. As a matter of fact, he said it in a debate, saying that he was going to have a special prosecutor look into this. But look, we're dealing with a situation now that where Donald Trump, for him, it's all about leverage. And what does that mean exactly? Well, leverage means cutting deals and making sure you have the best negotiating power going into a deal. If you're going to pursue Hillary Clinton during a Trump administration in those first crucial 100 days, you're going to lose leverage power because you're going to have a lot of Democrats that will be against you. Excuse me, you'll have the media that's going to be against you. And all of a sudden, you're going to have a narrative that you don't want out there when you're trying to get other things done. It's one less roadblock, one less obstacle. It's probably the smart move at this point.
Well, David, in his YouTube speech, Trump didn't mention some actions he'd promised, like repealing Obamacare. Is he working with Congress on those, and has he got actions ready to take as soon as he gets inaugurated?
He does, and you're going to see some very quick movement. Now, Pat, this is going to be a layered process. So what do I mean by that? There are 3 layers. There's repeal, and then there's replace. Replace, that's the 3rd layer. That will come later. In other words, it's a Republican plan that needs to be formulated, and that could take a year, 2 years potentially. But the repeal part of it could happen very quickly, but not all of the repeal. So, for example, Pat, what we'll see probably in that first 10 to 14 days is there'll be some budget reconciliation work on Capitol Hill. Now, I know you know all about that, but it's a bit in the weeds. The bottom line is this. There are items in Obamacare that are related to the budget as it relates to taxes and spending. You can, with 51 votes only, go ahead and get Congress to pass some of those issues, or I should say recommendations, and then you only need, like I said, 51 votes to pass taxes and spending issues. And so that's what would happen. And so a lot of that would go away. A lot of Obamacare would go away that way. But that second layer is some other obstacles within the bill as it relates to pre-existing conditions and keeping the kids on the plan till 26. That's going to need congressional overhaul, more 60 votes on that.
Well, you know, he really went after the TV media yesterday. It was just amazing. They said it was like being at the end of a firing squad. Well, is he going to open himself to the media? Is he going to let them get on the plane with him?
Well, I think that's still up for, quote, negotiation, Pat. Look, I spoke to a couple of these network anchors that were inside that meeting. As a matter of fact, I just heard from one of them about 20 minutes ago. And of course, it's an off-the-record meeting, so they can't comment necessarily on it. But I can tell you this, that what is being reported is true, but there's a ... to this. In other words, there wasn't a lot of angry vitriol in the meeting. It wasn't Trump shouting at the media members saying you are all a bunch of idiots, basically. However, he did definitely take them to task and called them out by name. There's no question about that. So the level of vitriol wasn't necessarily in the room, but there was definitely some animosity in the room, but more on a low-scale environment. Look, Pat, I have to tell you, this is going to be a whole new ballgame with the media because Laura Ingraham, the conservative host out there, could indeed be press secretary, and we know she's a firebrand, and she is not going to, to deal with those White House media briefings between Laura Ingraham and the press, I'll take a front row seat and some popcorn for that.
Well, the Democrats and the media have been after Jeff Sessions, and he was, he could have had anything he wanted in the administration. He said, I'll be Attorney General, which means, of course, that he will vet the judges. He will be sending the judges, all layer of judges, through to Trump for a nomination. Do you think he's going to have any trouble going through the Senate?
No, I think there's going to be some pushback, no doubt. There's some civil rights concerns from Democrats as it relates to some of what he has been up against before in the past, of some talk. There were some conversations that apparently he said a few derogatory words, and that's going to be all brought back up. But look, he passed an extension of the Civil Rights Act. He worked at desegregating schools in Alabama. So, ultimately, he's going to be confirmed. I don't think there's a question about that. And so Trump will be able to do that. Now, as you mentioned, judges, it's interesting. Jeff Sessions, Attorney General, remember, he's from Alabama. Well, one of the key folks on that judicial list, that Supreme Court nomination list, is Bill Pryor. Yes. William Pryor from Alabama. Him and Sessions, good friends, and Bill Pryor, no doubt, one of the top picks on that list of 21 that we've seen so far. A lot of folks want to see Pryor in that seat.
Pryor's a dear friend of ours. He's been to Regent several times, and I think Jay Sekulow helped him get elected as Attorney General of Alabama. But they say he's at 54, he's a little old. I think that's crazy. I say he's got 20, 25 more good years, and he'd make a tremendous Supreme Court judge.
Well, and let's also remember, he's been very heavily involved in the, quote, culture wars dating back to the 80s and 90s and since then. So no doubt social conservatives will love that pick. And Dianne Sykes is also one of those top picks, along with Texas Supreme Court Judge Don Willett. So we'll see.
All right, there's also talk about Marine Corps General Mad Dog Mattis. He's supposed to be a tremendous warrior, one of the old-fashioned tough Marine four-star general as Secretary of Defense. How about that?
Well, apparently the meeting went very, very well with Mad Dog Mattis and Donald Trump, and it's no wonder why. I mean, both guys are very much, they call it as they see it. They're blunt. They have no time for political correctness, and James Mattis has proven that throughout his career. I have to tell you that I actually, about a year and a half ago or so, I moderated a forum with General Mattis down in Virginia at the USGLC, the United States Global Leadership Coalition, and he's a blunt, straight-talking guy, and you know, my spidey sense, if you want to call it that, Pat, suggests that I think he's going to have a role in this administration. I know he's up for defense secretary. We'll see if it's defense secretary. I know there's some concerns about some of what he said about Israel as it relates to two-state solutions and settlements, but I have a feeling Mattis we're going to hear his name quite often come January 20th.
David, look at it from 30,000 feet, and you got Trump doing what he's doing. Compare that to some of these other guys who've gone in the transition to some of his predecessors.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, President Obama didn't pick his first cabinet or offer his first cabinet pick until 3.5 weeks into after he was elected. So, I mean, look, the 30,000-foot view is things are going just fine. I mean, look, it's a transition. Anytime you have to hire 4,000 people in the span of 2 months, that's called a heavy lift. And it's a heavy lift for the incoming Trump administration. It's been a heavy lift for George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush. And you've got James, and I'm losing my train of thought as to who it was, that's White House Chief of Staff for George H.W. Bush. James Baker finally came back to me. Oh, my goodness. James Baker has talked about it. It's a very, very tough deal. So, you know, the media wants to have a sensational aspect to all of this, but the reality is it is under control because Mike Pence has really taken the helm on all of that, and Chris Christie is not doing anything right now for the transition team.
Thanks, David. Stay with it. We want more of that insightful news as we go down the road.